Welcome to the video podcast Richard Gage 9/11 Unleashed, where truth and unity matter. Take the deep dive with highly influential voices in and around the 9/11 truth movement.
And welcome back, everybody, to Richard Gage 9/11 Unleashed. It's my sincere honor to be with you today. And boy, do we have an incredible panel of guests for you. They're just waiting, chomping at the bit to get in here and tell you about the exciting project that we have. And I'm telling you, I'm chomping at the bit. I don't know if they are, but we'll see. Let's put them to the test. First, let me introduce you to my wonderful wife, Ms. Gage. Gail, how are you and how have you been?
Hi, Richard, and hi, everybody. I am doing wonderful. Yes, and this is going to be a really exciting podcast. Just such wonderful news.
But first, didn't you have an announcement that you wanted to tell everybody about, a new project that we're working on also?
Oh, yes. With the help of very sweet Sandra Jelmy, we are going to be starting a community hub for the 9/11 Truth Movement, which is greatly needed, a way for everybody to connect. And boy, Sandra, I appreciate her so much. She works a full-time job also. So everything she does to help volunteer for us is on her own time. And she's going to be heading this up so that she's going to find out, go and research, and it's going to be on the website. So there's going to be a place on the website, I think, is it already there right now?
Not yet.
Going to be soon, called Community Hub, where you can go to find all the other people that she has gathered up in groups. There's going to be groups, 9/11 groups and individuals. So basically, if you are desiring to be able to either reach out or be part of a group or just connect, so you're not the only one in your world who, is really concerned and, wanting to make a difference with the 9/11 Truth Movement.
And all the websites out there too, as well, all around the world, people connecting. This hasn't been done effectively yet in the 9/11 Truth Movement, even though we've been at it for altogether almost 20 years, or more than 20 years, actually. Any other exciting announcements before we move on, Gail?
Well, I think that's about it. Hold on a minute. We just are busy all the time. We're working on reaching out for radio interviews. There's a lot of people who are contacting us to do interviews for you, and busy with all of the future podcast guests that we're going to be bringing on. So, yeah.
Yeah. And let me tell everybody, in case you're new to the efforts here we're making at richardgage911.org, I am no longer with AE 9/11 Truth. I have moved on and been moved on. And that goes back to the loss of the opportunity at HBO that we had, an epic opportunity to get the message out on HBO. And Spike Lee had pulled that 30-minute segment due to some comments I made about COVID. And so that echoed and reverberated, and people were not happy, and I didn't follow the instructions and the good instructions that I had been given to faithfully talk only about the World Trade Center towers, which is the mission that I represented at AE 9/11 Truth for 3,500 architects and engineers. So we had quite a discussion, and I am now launched on my own. So we're a double barrel shotgun in the 9/11 Truth Movement now. I've been adopted. So gratefully am I to have been orphaned, yet now adopted by the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry. And I can't tell you what a blessing that's been, and you're going to find out today how fortuitous this set of happenings is, because my guests today are the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, which has for over a decade been involved in bringing the evidence in the community of 9/11 truth researchers into the courts. And we're gonna meet three board members of Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, each of which has a very special role in the very special project that we are creating. And let me begin by introducing Ms. Kristina Borjesson, an Emmy Award-winning investigative journalist and filmmaker. Now, why is that important? Because we're talking to you today about the creation of a new film in the 9/11 truth movement. And she's got what she needs to make this happen. She made the film TWA Flight 800, in which she exposed egregious government cover-up of the destruction of that aircraft, TWA 800, as a result of explosive ordinance. Her vast experience includes reporting and filmmaking for major television networks, including CBS, CNN, and PBS. Let me bring her in here to introduce you first to her. Hello, Kristina.
Hey,
You doing well?
I'm fine, and it's good to be with you.
It's awesome to be with you. So, are you excited to talk about this project today?
Very excited. Very excited. I think you should do the honors of at least giving the title of the project and talking a little bit about it first, because I'm the director, but you are the man who brought this project and the idea of this project to life.
All right, I'll tell you what. We'll keep our audience on pins and needles for just a few more minutes while I introduce our next wonderful guest, who is attorney Mick Harrison, a founder of the Lawyers Committee and nonprofit organization. He serves as litigation director and executive director. Mick is an experienced public interest plaintiff's attorney with a national practice focused on whistleblower protection, government oversight and accountability, and environmental protection. Without any further ado, let me also introduce you to Mr. Mick Harrison. Hello, Mick.
Hey, Richard, how you doing?
I'm a happy camper now that you're here.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. You all, and Kristina.
Hey, Mick.
I've had the deep pleasure of working with you and your crew over there at LC 9/11, of which I'm now an integral part. And I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed working with you and everybody there. It's been very, very exciting, especially on this new project, which I still haven't announced the title of, have I?
No, and I won't spoil it. So I'll let you cue us when you want to talk about it. But it is exciting. And I think you're right. It's fortuitous. It's sometimes things are blessings in disguise. And I think your transition to us gave us this opportunity to do this project, which is going to be a great collaboration. And I think folks will understand that when they hear more about it.
If they ever do. And with that in mind, before I introduce our final panelists, I want to ask Gail, my wonderful wife and assistant, because I forgot to before, to let people know how they can ask questions and on what platforms and what you're going to do with those.
Yes, so it turns out that Facebook, there's two different Facebook accounts. There's the public figure page and then his personal page. Under the video on Facebook is where you can ask the questions in the comment section. So when you type in your comments, they come up here on StreamYard and I can see them, and I copy and paste them over so that our speakers can see them. And then also on YouTube, you can leave your comments on there. So, and yeah, unfortunately, it does not look like we receive from Twitter or LinkedIn yet. So I'm going to work on trying to see if that's possible.
All right, great. So we'll bring Gail back near the end, and she'll have all your questions on those platforms put together for us, right, Gail?
That's right.
All right, so stay tuned and we'll bring you back. But not before we introduce our next guest, Barbara Honegger, an investigative researcher and board member of the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry also, along with the rest of us. She was a former Reagan White House and Department of Justice official and a 16-year Department of Defense senior military affairs journalist, the author of October Surprise. And let me introduce you to her now. There's Ms. Barbara Honegger. Hello, Barbara.
Hi, Richard. This is exciting, what we're about to announce.
Do you think we're ever going to get to it?
Well, I'm hoping you will.
Well, you should.
All right, let's do it, you guys.
Yeah.
We're talking, everybody, about a new film project, a joint venture with Richard Gage 9/11.org and the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry. This is a film that the 9/11 Truth Movement has been waiting for over 10 years. So I call it the film project of the decade. It's called 9/11, Crime Scene to Courtroom. We're going to show you why in a moment. And let me just ask some questions here of you, the audience. What if you could make sure that the grand jury, not just any grand jury, but the grand jury in the Southern District of Manhattan, could actually see the evidence that most of you are very familiar with by now, having seen our documentary 9/11 Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out, that I made in 2013. And then near the same time, with Ed Asner, a documentary on Building 7 called Solving the Mystery of World Trade Center 7. And that evidence, what if it could be made and built for a grand jury? That's what we're here to talk about. Why don't we start with the vision of this film? What thoughts do any of you have about why this film is important? And then we'll get into the nitty gritty of it.
Let's hear from our director, Kristina.
Well, this film is unprecedented, really, in with regards to this particular incident and the crimes involved, because there have been a lot of investigations. Obviously, Richard, you and architects and engineers were the premier sort of purveyors of expert, assessment of the evidence. But, it's always missing on a lot of these big stories, a lot of these big criminal events. What's always missing is, okay, so now we have this evidence. How are we going to get justice and accountability for these crimes that this evidence is indicating occurred? And that's why this is such an important collaboration, because the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, that's their mission. Their mission is to gather that evidence, look at it, and decide what crimes have been committed, and to get, a petition detailing these crimes to a grand jury. And since that's very hard to do on these very, how shall I say, controversial or third rail issues, what's great about this film is that you, the audience, are going to trail along with the lawyer, our key lawyer and our key, presenter of the evidence, Richard, and they're gonna take you through all the evidence and they're gonna make you the grand jury, in the sense. You will be the grand jury. You will see this evidence. They will present this evidence, and they will present the arguments, the legal arguments and and explain the crimes that have been committed and the laws that have been broken. And that's never been done.
Mm.
It's never been done, not just for 9/11, but for a lot of major crimes that have occurred. So I'm excited about it for that reason.
Excellent. Who's next?
Nick.
Oh, thank you, Barb. So to follow up on Kristina's insights, this is a groundbreaking project because it does combine law with the evidence on 9/11 so that we don't just understand the scientific persuasiveness of the evidence. Richard has done such a marvelous job of presenting that for the last 10 years or so. And a lot of people get it at a factual and scientific level. And we want to make sure that a grand jury can get it. We did present this evidence, as many of you know, in a detailed petition. We submitted it to the U.S. Attorney in New York, and the law requires the U.S. Attorney to give our petition to the federal grand jury, the special grand jury. We're still litigating in federal court to make that happen. It shouldn't take a lawsuit, but it has so far to make it happen. Still in progress, but we do still intend for a special federal grand jury to see this evidence. At the moment, the evidence that's been submitted is in writing. It's detailed. There are 60 exhibits. There's a 50-some page analysis of the evidence and the law. And what we want to do, as Richard is very artful at explaining, is to make this evidence come alive for a grand jury and to give it in video format, which is much more understandable and usable for most folks, so that when we do get this evidence in front of a grand jury, we hope that they're actually going to see this actual video, this multi-part documentary we're producing, and it will be as persuasive for them as we hope it will be for you. And we do have a role for you to play. We'll talk a little more about that, about the role the public will play, but I'll stop for the moment and pass the torch.
Yeah, Barb, how about that? What gets you going?
Would you mind if I pass the torch to you? You're the main visionary of this, after all. And then let me go last.
Okay.
I mean, I'm willing.
Let me say that until I've always wanted to make a new film about the evidence, first of all, but we've done that, right? We did that 10 years ago with 9/11 explosive evidence experts speak out. We have 40 high-rise architects, structural engineers, metallurgists, chemists, physicists, controlled demolition experts. It's been seen by millions. And that's pretty good, but is not in the courts. So what gave, actually, I have to give this one back to Barb. She says, yeah, we need to make a film about the evidence, but we need to frame it legally with the work that LC 9/11 is doing. And so you guys at LC 9/11 invited me out there swimming in the sea without a boat, not much of a life raft either. Saw the need for some technical advice because that's what you do. You're taking the technical evidence and you're packaging it, and you've done that, and you've submitted to the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan, Southern District, 60 exhibits of largely our technical evidence. And that was an incredible moment. And that was a couple of years ago now. And you've had to sue them. I'm one of the plaintiffs on that lawsuit. So I'm like, yeah, let's force them to tell us whether they complied with the law, which requires them to give this evidence to a special grand jury. And Mick, I want to make sure we come back to you and tell us about how long it can take in your professional experience to achieve justice for for some people and some issues, and this is no small potatoes issue. This is a big one. So we'll come back to you on that. But now we're not just going to present the evidence. We're going to look right into the camera. We're going to speak to the heart of the jurors, and they're going to get to know us. And Kristina's going to tell how that's going to happen. And but this concept was brought to me initially by you, Barb, and that was to work together, make it a joint project, bring the evidence and put it in the courtroom. So how are we going to do that? Your turn.
Well, I'd just like to say that what the Lawyers Committee, and all of us are on the board, by the way, of the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, along with Jane Clark, who is, along with Mick, the co-founders of the organization many, many years ago. I think it was 2015, something like that. But I just like to say what I think is so important about not just this project, and not too long into this podcast, we're going to ask you to help us co-produce this incredible new film for the entire 9/11 Truth Movement. But what's really important to me about the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry and the project is that it's been clear to me for a very long time that what is necessary to be the bridge between the evidence and accountability, both in the public jury and also in a grand jury, in other words, in the official legal system, is literally to take every step we can to officialize the truth. Now, that's a word that I've invented, to officialize the truth. But years ago, I'll give you an example. When I did the research, like architects and engineers did for World Trade Centers 1, 2, and 7, when I was doing the research on the deep story behind the Iran side of Iran-Contra, I had gotten to the point where my detailed supported timeline with citations was 76 pages. And nothing happened. I sent it all around. I went to my local, I won't say which party, but I went to some top people here in the Monterey Peninsula of California, because I realized nothing happens in Washington unless it's politicized. Unfortunately, that's the reality of politics and power in this country and most countries in the world. And so, but still nothing happened. And then one day I woke up and, the force or the angel or whatever said, you've got to make a sworn juror affidavit out of this. And I thought to myself, well, that's not going to make any difference. It's the same content. It's just writing something down on a piece of paper and taking it to a notary public and swearing myself up and signing it and having that official stamp on it. Well, a miracle happened. It was like the Red Sea parted, literally. I did that. It cost me $25 back then. This is in the 1980s, mid-1980s, that I did this. And then I took it back to the political party operatives in the Monterey Peninsula here in California. And the Red Sea opened. They took it to Washington, D.C., and it wasn't long. I mean, I'm serious. It wasn't long. Of course, I wrote a book also that was on the cover of Publishers Weekly. That didn't hurt. But still, that hadn't done it. It was that sworn juror affidavit that broke everything open. And that sworn juror affidavit ended up resulting in a full subpoena power, a congressional investigation funded at a level of the 9/11 Commission in a very short period of time from that sworn juror affidavit. That taught me a lesson. And that lesson is why I'm with the Lawyers Committee and why I told Richard that we've got to officialize all this evidence. I will never forget when my dear friend and colleague Richard Gage said to me, in a one-on-one, we were having breakfast or lunch or something on our joint speaking tour in Europe and in the UK a few years back, 2017, I think. And Richard said to me over a meal there, just the two of us, he said, Barb, I just don't get it. I really thought that all we had to do was was show people the evidence, show people the truth, and everything would happen. We would have legal accountability, and Washington would come around, and I kind of laughed. And I said, well, you've got a lot to learn.
You've been around the block a few more times than me.
You do have to officialize the truth. So I'll just leave it at that. And then that's what this project is. Yeah.
Yeah. How are we going to do that, Mick?
Well, it's not exactly a piece of cake, Richard, but we have a good plan. We have a good start, actually. You ask, how long does it take sometimes in the judicial system to get to the goal line, to get to some justice and a good outcome? I've had cases, whistleblower cases, environmental cases that have lasted, 10 years, or had public interest campaigns with multiple cases involved that have lasted 10 years or more. So it does take time sometimes. And the bigger the problem, generally, the more time it takes. The problem we're grappling with here, basically the crimes of the century leading to the wars of the century, it doesn't get too much bigger than what we're dealing with here. And so we can't expect an overnight solution. And I give credit to the folks in the 9/11 Truth Movement who have hung in there for 20 years. A lot of folks, architects and engineers is one group, but there are several others, a lot of the scientists and engineers who came forward, David Ray Griffin, a lot of folks who moved the issue, who spoke this truth to power, and have set the stage for what Barb was talking about, which is the next effort to what Barb calls officializing the truth, which to me means getting it into the legal system so that it is legally actionable, and getting it out with such credibility, scientific and legal credibility, that even the mainstream media may have difficulty ignoring it, and Congress will have difficulty ignoring it. And that's what our goal is for this project. This is not just a film. It is a film associated with an investigation, and it's a film associated with a legal campaign involving not only our existing lawsuits, which we can talk a little bit about at the appropriate point, where we're trying to get this evidence in front of a grand jury as we speak. There's an outside chance it's sitting in front of the grand jury as we speak, and the government hasn't told us, but there's a 95% chance the government is holding it back. We have an appeal in the Second Circuit right now that's pending. We should get oral argument scheduled any moment on that appeal. It's been fully briefed to get an order to essentially direct the district court, to direct the U.S. attorney to honor his mandatory duty, or her mandatory duty, to give all of this evidence to the special grand jury, as the law says it must be done. So we're on the way, but at an appropriate point, we'll explain how you're all going to help us episode by episode evaluate this evidence, develop the evidence, and help us move into the next lawsuit. And we are contemplating a major lawsuit that will follow on from this investigation, different than anything we've done.
Well, we'll hold that till a little later. That's exciting too. So don't go away yet, everyone.
I'd like to make a comment
Yeah.
and ask Kristina to comment on it, because I meant to say earlier that what we've already submitted, which is our grand jury petition to the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, as opposed to Manhattan. The courthouse is in Manhattan, but it's the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. And that was way back on April 10th of 2018. And then very exciting, on November 7th of that year, to our great and positive surprise, we received a letter from the U.S. Attorney's Office, who had received our petition and the evidentiary exhibits, with a letter, short and sweet, saying we are going to comply with the law, stating the law that we had cited, and saying, yes, we will comply with the law. And our reading of the law is very clear that the law does require the U.S. Attorney to either give our petition and exhibits to an existing criminal grand jury, or convene a new special criminal grand jury to receive it. So far, they haven't been willing to tell us that they've done that. They're hiding behind so-called grand jury secrecy. And we're suing them right now, and we hope to break through that. But what I wanted to throw into Kristina's lap is that if you go to our website, lcfor911.org, where you will be able to co-produce this project, with your generous donations that we're going to be asking you for tonight. If you go there and click on the banner or the menu at the top where it says Grand Jury Petition or World Trade Center Grand Jury Petition, something like that, and there's a pull down menu and you will be able to read, you will actually be able to read the petition. And there are live links to all those 60 exhibits in that Grand Jury Petition. But the point I wanted to make is, with that context, is that it's very dry language. It's very legalese language. It has to be for the court. So what Kristina has brought to the table, which is so exciting to me, is this film is going to reach out to the hearts as well as the minds of the actual criminal grand jury, special criminal grand jury, as well as the general public through this film. So I'd like to hear from Kristina about how she's going to do that.
Well, first of all, you talk about the petition being very dry, and I can tell you that the first time I read that petition, it lit my hair on fire.
Yeah, the content,
because
the content, yes.
The content is quite explosive, literally and figuratively. But look, we talk about this, we're going to present this to the grand jury, but you have to understand that everybody who's behind this project, Mick, Richard, these are human beings, these are characters. It's like, who are these people and how did they do this? Why have they devoted themselves to this? You will get to know there will be characters throughout. It's not just people standing at a podium or, talking on and on about it. You're going to get to know these people as individuals and learn what makes them tick and motivates them to even be part because of this effort to get to the truth of 9/11, because everybody who is part of the 9/11 truth, or most people, I would say, I mean, I can't say everybody, but because I don't know, but most people who are in the truth movement want to know the truth and they want justice and they want accountability. But it's very, very, very few people who are devoting their lives and their expertise to actually making that happen, or even have the expertise and the hangdog, as they put it in Texas, to keep pushing at it for years. You have to be an extraordinary individual. And, the architects and engineers who have all been involved and signed up on this, I'm sure some of them were worried about their careers. Mick Harrison, oh my God. I mean, Mick is, I don't know. I'm not going to call him a saint to his face, but,
Thank you very much.
He'll accept it.
You have to, this is not just presentation of evidence and the crimes. And this is a story about people coming together on a very, very important mission. And you get to watch them fulfill this task that might actually finally do what happened with Barbara, what Barbara did. It might actually finally break open the case, because as you go along, this is going to be a series. You're going to get to know everybody. You're going to experience the ups and downs with us, with the main characters and so on. And you're going to follow them around when they go to the crime scenes, or when they talk to experts, they talk to family members, or we'll bring family members to talk to, to present the evidence, whatever, there are all these elements that it's like it's like a Shakespearean drama on one level, because it's such a huge task. And, but it's also a very inspiring thing to watch these people operate, because I've watched them operate. I joined the lawyers committee because I read that petition. Mm-hmm. So, it moved me. So that's, and you as a co-producer and as the grand jury, until we can get a court to open up a real grand jury to us, you will be the grand jury. You will meet our characters. You will see our evidence. You will know what crimes have been committed. and how they're going to be presented to the court. And the more of you who follow us, the more pressure increases on the judicial system to pay, and the political system to pay attention and to do
very,
something.
very important. Never forget that it is our intention to package the series of episodes. And I'd like Richard to talk about that. This is not just one long film. This is a series of about 20-minute episodes that will be put together and presented to the actual special criminal grand jury. Never forget that. So Richard, maybe you could tell us about how you vision these episodes.
Wait.
Okay.
Anthony has asked a question that I think is a very interesting one for Richard.
Yeah.
Who is the most surprising individual you were able to convince of the evidence?
Oh, like of all the people we've talked to,
Right.
who did we finally break through to? Well, let's hold that question for the end, because I'm gonna have to think about that one, and Gail will bring them back to us at the end. These great questions, Anthony. Stop asking such great questions.
Well, I think we can. The lawyers committee has somebody that we can talk.
Somebody
about.
in particular. Well,
Yes, we're talking about the anthrax attacks, which were the follow-on attacks, right after 9/11. And we had a really interesting chat with Richard Lambert, who was in charge of the FBI investigation of the anthrax attacks. And he realized that the FBI's investigation was compromised, and he felt that they had picked the wrong culprit, and he fought it, and his report is still suppressed right now. But when we talked to him, he said something amazing, because I felt like, he was kind of reticent, and we were telling him things that we learned, and we could tell that we were surprising him.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, he came back, and he paid us a great compliment, which was, he said that, Mick will remember the exact words, what he said about our work.
He said the petition we did to Congress on the anthrax attacks was the most thorough, and he maybe used another adjective, well done analysis of the evidence that he had ever seen
And
on
he
the
was
anthrax attacks. And he's the one who was in charge of the investigation.
the entire investigation for the FBI for 4 years.
So that was a compliment, and we felt good about having persuaded him, although, he was a bit of he learned the hard way about some of the problems.
He was very reticent about a lot of things when he was talking to us, but we were sharing stuff with him and talking. And when he said that after, I was very proud of us, actually.
I can tell you another story, but and then I want to get back to our film. And all of this does relate to the film, because these stories will be in the film. The grand jurors, after all, will be those people that are waking up in real time as they're watching this film. Because Mick, you've said that you are going to be submitting this film to the grand jurors. How does that work? And then we'll get back to my special story.
Okay, short version, we will prepare a supplement to our petition to the special grand jury, which we've already filed, which we're currently litigating to have delivered. And that supplement should be delivered just as the original petition to the actual grand jurors. The law should have the same mandate for the U.S. attorney for that supplement as it does for the original petition.
And so they'll watch it. I mean,
That's the idea.
Thing they're probably going to watch. I mean, would you rather watch a series of 15 or 20 minute segments of video, or would you rather read 60 exhibits that are how many hundreds of pages long?
Or both.
So it's a nice, well, they need to do
No,
both.
nobody wants to read.
Well, they're gonna
The
help you.
lawyers have.
And video is so immediate, and when people see people, and they see, you know, they sense they're honest, they sense they're good experts, they sense that, you know, they know what they're talking about, and they sense that they have that sense of wanting to get to the truth. You know, this you can't put that can't be seen on paper. You know, it can't. And so that's why video is so powerful. And
The video is a
this is going to be
fantastic-
amazing. I know
The
it's gonna
video,
be.
the video is a fantastic way to introduce the more detailed information in text and the 60 exhibits to the grand jury. It's a way to open their hearts and minds to accept it.
Now,
So
as you're seeing here, everybody, I want to announce to you that we have been very successful so far in encouraging a few major donors to support this film. They got really excited when we talked to them about it. And they said things like, this film has to happen. This is where I want my money to go next. This is there's no choice. This is the time for this film. After all, we just had a fantastic film produced about 4 family members. Their stories of their 20-year struggle for justice. Bob McIlvaine and the others. The AE 9/11 Truth put this film together. Excellent work by Dylan Avery, Kelly David, Ted Walter, and this is actually produced by William Hurt, also executive producer. So what they've done is told the story, and the evidence that has come out in this film. Well, you get to know them first of all, so our hearts are open, therefore our minds are more likely to be open. Those who are watching this, and they go into some of the evidence, but they really just were able to touch on it in the time they had in this 1.5-hour long film. So what we're doing here is really the perfect follow-up to this fantastic film. And in the film, for instance, there is some incredible evidence that's hinted at. Well, not just hinted at. Cyril Wecht, famous pathologist, has looked at the medical records that Kelly David found, and he says, "Wait a minute, you've got bone fragments this big from individual A embedded in the soft tissue of individual B. That only happens with massive, powerful explosions."
yeah.
So that and you had something similar at TWA 800.
Exactly. By the way, I just want to address Gene's comment. He wants to hear the panel discuss how they see an episode play out, and is asking about whether Niels Harrit and Stephen Jones would be expert witnesses. First of all, of course, Niels Harrit and Stephen Jones. I mean, how can you not include them in something like this? Of course. But to how we see an episode playing out, that's we're still in the process of breaking those out. And so we really, I would hesitate to, imagine this, and this is what's going to happen. It's not. Also, in documentary, you have to leave some room for the surprising event, or surprises that occur for good or bad. But it's too early right now for us to talk about that. But you're definitely right about Niels and Stephen Jones, for sure.
Let me take you back then, because where I left off was the major donors who are supporting this film have collectively donated $40,000. Now, this film can be made for $120,000. So they've done most of the heavy lifting for all of us.
A third of the
But
work.
they
Yeah.
can't do it all. So what we're asking everybody else to contribute at is a $20 level, a $50 level, a $100 level. This and you all have your own levels. I have mine. I've contributed so far, and but that $20 turns into $40 now because this is a matching grant, a $40,000 collective matching grant. We won't have this opportunity again. You know, they've said, hey, if I'll do my part, if everybody else will do theirs. But if you don't do yours, we don't have a film still. That's how it works. So we're turning it back to you at home. Do you think, like our major donors did, that this film needs to be made? Because if you're thinking that, then we've got to have you acting on that as well. And that's why we've brought Kristina and Mick and Barbara all together here with me today, is to lay out the vision for this film. And we'll get into more of the specifics in a moment. But this is your opportunity, maybe your first opportunity, to really co-produce a film, because you're going to be providing your sacred treasure in a project that is going to wake up millions of people with this film. That's the goal. That's our vision. And that's why we've selected Emmy Award-winning investigative journalist and filmmaker Kristina Borjesson, who's already made the film TWA 800, TWA Flight 800, that's available to watch. You can see her work on Amazon.com.
Please do.
Yeah, it's exceptional film. Mm-hmm. And what are some of the parallels that you found in that film, Kristina?
Oh, well, you're talking about a plane exploding in the sky. In this case, you were talking about explosions that occurred in buildings where planes went into. So when you talk about the evidence of the presence of ordinance, we had that too. And then of course, when you talk about the cover-up, the earmarks are also very similar. Why? Because the same agencies were involved in the cover-ups of both. Well, in the case of 9/11, it's huge because you have more than one venue, you know. But that's another thing that happened when I read that the Lawyers Committee's petition to the grand jury for my film. We had 6 whistleblowers who were government insiders who were actually part of the official investigation. So one of them, Hank Hughes, senior investigator for the National Transportation Safety Board, wrote an affidavit about everything he saw that went on that corrupted the investigation. And I actually helped him write that affidavit. And we had 56 or 59 exhibits. I forget how many. And when I read that petition, the hair on the back of my neck stood up because it was very similar to the affidavit. And I know the hell that Mr. Hank Hughes and these other people who appeared in, I mean, this series is a whistleblower series. And yes, Anthony, there will be eyewitnesses to 9/11 who will testify, who will talk. I mean, I would think so, because this is truly a unique and unprecedented effort. And, you know, you want to talk to a lawyer about what you know? Well, we have the lawyer for you. And so I think I think a lot of people may actually also come forward as this series progresses with more information. because
Yeah,
I think it will inspire that. I'm hoping it will inspire that.
Now, but in your case with TWA Flight 800, which happened in 2013,
Right.
you had the media coming out and helping you in all kinds of ways, didn't you, Kristina?
I think that's a joke.
Oh, that's funny.
No. Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, look, first of all, people should know that I'm a refugee of the networks. I actually lost my job because I was assigned to investigate the crash of TWA Flight 800. And all of a sudden I went, it's a long story, but the FBI came after me for a piece of evidence that was sent to me legally to have tested. Anyway, they didn't like that. And so they came after me, and, CBS didn't like the fact that I was on the FBI's radar. So they gave me my walking papers. And that's when I published a couple of books about corruption in the media. And so actually, Anthony is asking, would a body language expert be an appropriate witness for analyzing the bizarre news broadcasts and elected officials' press conferences from the events? You don't even need that. I mean, it's everybody knows. What'll be interesting is to show how the press handmaidens the government agencies in covering up. And we can show that throughout the series, okay, and show how the cover-up is perpetual. Your tax dollars at work, a perpetual cover-up. And so that's the whole point of this series is, to show all of this, to show the evidence, to show the cover-up, to show the laws that have been broken and the crimes that have been committed, and to say, okay, grand jury, for now, you, the audience, is the grand jury, but eventually there's enough noise that's going to be made about this that a real grand jury is not going to be able, a real court is not going to be able to not provide a grand jury for this, because by law, Mick, you can address this. By law, if any citizen goes and reports a crime, correct?
Yes,
and
to a U.S. attorney.
Right.
U.S. attorney must, emphasize the word must, provide the report of the crime to the special grand jury. This is a federal law, special grand jury statute. It is a mandatory duty. It's not within the discretion of the U.S. attorney to ignore it.
Yeah. So, and they have, so far they're trying very, very hard. And this is another thing that you will experience right along with Mick and Richard, how these courts act and how they weasel. First of all, they, take time, time. And then they come back with some sort of weasel time wasting thing. You have to file more papers and you have to fight this and that. And people need to see this. They need to see how a corrupt justice system works until it can't be corrupt anymore, because the pressure from the public is too much for them.
Well, and that the answer to that corruption is, in fact, the people's grand jury.
Exactly.
Yeah, we need to get back. Many people don't know this, but the Supreme Court of the United States, in an official ruling, which they do, by the most Scalia, who arguably was the most conservative justice of the Supreme Court, certainly at the time, and that's just a few years ago. But back even before that, the Supreme Court of the United States, in an opinion, majority opinion written by Scalia, Justice Scalia, stated, and this is an almost verbatim quote, that the federal grand jury, the federal criminal grand jury, is the fourth, this is a quote, the fourth people's, meaning the citizens of the United States, the fourth people's branch of the federal government, co-equal with the executive, meaning the presidency and all the executive branches, and the courts, and the judiciary. In other words, all the way up to the Supreme Court itself. That power is phenomenal, and we need to bring it back to the people.
How many of you knew that?
Yeah, it's very, very important. Look it up.
By the way, Ray has a question for you, Barbara.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer that question. We're supposed to
Okay.
answer questions at the end, and that's getting us completely off the topic.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't want to do the questions. Just try to ignore those questions, Christina.
oh, okay. I
Don't
just feel like,
seem to-
you know,
We do
people
those
like,
at the end.
Yeah,
oh,
Gail will
oh, oh.
collect them for us. All the good
Okay.
ones. They're all good. That's the problem. But we'll get to them. Now, you guys asked me about breaking this up. What we wanted to do is provide bite-sized pieces that are digestible not only by the grand jurors themselves, but by the public. And we want because the public has an attention span. I won't be derogatory here, but like me, it's short. And so we're going to come right off and kind of frame this whole series of episodes with a legal framework. So Mick, I wanted to ask you to talk about that, and then I'll talk about the kind of the order of the episodes.
Okay, so there are a few components to the legal framework, and this series of episodes will evolve, as Richard will explain to some extent, focusing on scientific evidence probably early on in episodes, and then we'll try to add to each episode the legal significance of the evidence presented in that episode and how it leads to the next episode and the next body of evidence, and eventually how that will lead to more investigative work and a new lawsuit, and maybe helping us break through in our existing lawsuit.
Breakthroughs. Yeah.
So keep in mind, there are multiple audiences for this body of evidence that we're presenting in the film for, as Richard says, more easy digestion by the general public and the grand jury. Keep in mind the grand jury is composed of, people like us and people not like us, people, a cross section of the general public. So before I became a lawyer, I've been a lawyer for 30 years, and I was a teacher for 10 years before that. I know it's hard to imagine. So I'm experiencing my 39th birthday over and over again at this point. But the point is that I can tell you as a teacher that people learn in different ways. People require different sort of modes of presentation to understand complex, particularly scientific information. I taught mathematics, so I can tell you what a challenge it is and what a great job Richard has done at making scientific evidence understandable over the years. And we're going to do that again, even more so in this video project. And then we're going to explain the technicalities of the law in a user-friendly way so that you understand the legal power of that evidence and how it can be used and why it should lead to a legal breakthrough.
Well, Mick, how do we explain to the jury the vast body of evidence that we're going to be subjecting them to?
Subjecting?
Well, in a matter of speaking.
I really don't think people are going to feel like they're being subjected to it because it's so shocking.
No, it's just technical. Richard just meant it's technical and it's complex, but it is powerful and it is important.
Well, it takes me 4 hours in my weekly webinar. I have 3 webinars it's called 9/11 An Architect's Guide, a 3-part series. The first part's all on Building 7. It's an hour and a half long to really get it out there. Now, a grand jury has time to that's the good news. They're paid to digest this. And as you said, Mick, I have tailored it so that it can be understood easily by somebody who hasn't even gotten into high school yet. So that is maybe the level that we want to address out there.
So there's still, though, as you ask, a legal structure that the evidence fits in. And we have to give the grand jury the legal structure, just as the U.S. attorney should, so that when the grand jury gets a piece of evidence, they see where it fits in the legal framework. So, for example, and the crimes we're talking about, as horrendous as they are, are not legally complex. For example, use of explosives in a federal building or the murder of a federal official. These are not complex federal crimes in terms of how they're defined. So in order to persuade the grand jury, excuse me, that this is a crime that should be investigated and perhaps an indictment issued for, you have to prove certain basic elements. But the heart of it, of course, is were explosives used at the Trade Center on 9/11, resulting in the death of over 2,000 people. It's basically a mass bombing, a mass murder by bombing that has never been recognized by the federal government for what it obviously is. And with your scientific presentation of the evidence and us providing the legal structure, I think, the grand jury is going to get it. It's not like, and I think, millions of people in the public get it already. But, this film is going to help really, what would be the word?
Mick, we're losing your audio.
I'm sorry, put it over the edge.
No, you sounded good to
you?
me. So it might be on your end, Barb.
Maybe yours, Barb.
Let's take it step by step here. We've got Building 7. Now that's the one I start with because we're told nobody died in that building, and most people don't even know that a third structure, high-rise, fell on 9/11, and they're just shocked when it's new information. We show them it comes down, at as fast as the old hotels in Las Vegas. It looks exactly like a controlled demolition. We're going to show the jurors that after witnesses hear explosions, and they'll hear those witnesses, this building drops like a rock straight down, uniformly, symmetrically into its own footprint in about 7 seconds. Now, a third of that 7-second fall is at free fall, which means that not one of those 80 columns in that building gave any resistance.
No resistance.
So this is not difficult, as you say, Mick, at all for people to get. I talk to all levels of people, and I've done 700 presentations in 24 countries in 100 American cities, and we do a show of hands. And overwhelmingly, people who came in not agreeing, people who came in believing the official story, the narrative of the destruction of these towers, that we asked for a show of hands afterward also. And we've converted, if you will, that's a religious term, I suppose. We've helped them see that a new investigation is necessary by a show of hands.
Right.
And you often 100% of the people in the audience, but there's usually one or two holdouts in groups of 100 to up to 4,000 we've spoken to. So now we're focused, not just the jury, the grand jurors, but the public as a whole, who we're going to put in the seat of the grand jury. We're going to invite them to cast judgment, to evaluate the evidence. And like you said, Mick, has there been a crime committed here? And they're going to see that, yes, there's a crime. And that's where most of us just kind of fall off, because it's not our job to indict somebody. But here we have a different opportunity. Can you explain that opportunity, Mick?
Well, there are two additional components to the task of the grand jury, and therefore to our task, beyond showing the crime was committed. And I think, we have dispositive, it's not just persuasive, it's legally and scientifically dispositive evidence that explosives were used. And to make the short version of that, you've got, residue of explosives found in the dust, independent laboratory analysis. You got 100 or more eyewitnesses, most of whom are trained observers, first responders, noting sights and sounds of explosions. And you got all the technical but very persuasive scientific evidence that once you get into it, like extreme temperatures and sulfur attacks on metal and microspheres that can't be created without extreme temperatures, once you get into that, you realize there is no other explanation for these phenomena. except the use of explosives. Now, so the crime is going to be established. Okay, we're going to get there and establish that. So the next two steps are the more challenging for the grand jury and for us in this film and our investigation that's going to go along with the film. And I think a new lawsuit that's going to come after. And the next component is the whodunit component. This is unfortunately a major murder mystery of great immense proportions, very tragic one.
Murder mystery.
But it needs to be solved. It's gone 20 years without being solved. And the reason it's gone 20 years without being solved is the third component. You know, you got the crime, you got the whodunit, and then you got government cover-up. And the third component is government cover-up. And that's why we don't have justice and truth yet, is because the government has put itself as an obstacle between us, the citizens, and even law enforcement and the grand jury and the perpetrators. And so, you know, this will evolve. This project will evolve with the help of you, the public, in terms of helping us develop the evidence, helping us determine which witnesses are key, helping us determine which direction to go. You know, if we get enough funding, we hope to bring this into court in a way that I won't disclose until Richard forces me to. But we'll do that at the right time. But so this is a multiple stage process, and it gets more challenging as you go.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a comment here, and that is Mick has just, and we've been talking about how, as the famous expression, I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's something like, the arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice.
Yeah.
It takes a long time for the wheels of the official justice system to work. However, we're never going to give up. So let's just remember that. That's what the Lawyers Committee is about. We are the committed team, and we need your help. We need your help to make this work. I would on this film, because we believe that this film is that lever. Remember, I'll probably butcher his name as well. Archimedes, is that right?
Yeah, Archimedes.
Archimedes said, "Give me a lever and the right, big enough lever and the right place to put it on the earth, and I can move the earth, the entire earth." And I just want people to know that it's the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, in particular, Mick and myself, together with, unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but former Senator Mike Gravel, a magnificent human being. The three of us were absolutely central to, after 16 years of government cover-up at the very highest level through Democratic and Republican administrations, we were able to get the 28 pages released, and to very shortly after that to get the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, JASTA, passed in initially an almost completely unanimous vote by both the House and the Senate of the United States Congress. If you can imagine, in this highly polarized political environment, even back then, or especially back then maybe. So, you know, you're looking at a team of people who actually get these things done at an extremely fundamental level in the law. In fact, after JASTA was passed, there was a comment by somebody, some legal wag in the press, who stated that, well, you know, if actually before JASTA passed, when the entire deep state of not only the United States, but the UK and France and Pakistan even, and Saudi Arabia and all across the world, they did not want JASTA to pass. We can talk about what JASTA is if you want, but the important thing is the entire deep state of all of the United States and its allies did not want JASTA to pass. But JASTA did pass almost unanimously by Congress. And there was this comment before JASTA passed. Well, JASTA can't pass by one of these deep state operatives. JASTA can't pass because that would be a revolution in the foundation of international law. That would, for the first time ever, strip sovereign immunity from a government, not only the Saudi government, which has now happened, but all governments of the world, unfortunately, with the sole exception of our own government, which is the font of the cover-up, the real cover-up of 9/11. So we have to think seriously about amending JASTA to cover similar crimes, inside crimes by the United States as we go forward.
And some of those crimes were by NIST themselves, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, who was tasked by our Congress to explain these collapses, all three of them, to the American people. So we're going to be exposing NIST's cover up as well. And so there's a lot on our plate here. What do I mean? Well, Shyam Sunder is the project leader of NIST, who's responsible mostly for the 1,000-page report for Building 7 and the 10,000-page report for the towers. In regards to Building 7, they explain this collapse, unprecedented collapse by normal office fires. Well, office fires have never brought down a skyscraper, so this is a steel frame fireproof skyscraper. This is an extremely unprecedented claim, an extraordinary one that should require extraordinary evidence, but there's none. Literally all of their evidence falls apart at the seams, and we can explain that to the grand jury and to the public, but we won't be able to do that without your support for this film. So we've got $60,000, $80,000 left to raise. So we're only talking to a few thousand of us in the 9/11 Truth movement. I mean, right now. And if you share this with everybody you know, not just kind of keep it hidden because you don't want to be called a conspiracy theorist.
Oh no!
This is the time to expand your power and take a stand for truth and for justice, and let them know, hey, blame the architects and engineers. There's 3,500 of them over at AE 9/11 Truth publicly signed on to a petition demanding a new investigation. So you can tell your friends, are they all conspiracy theorists? Probably not. So use them. That's why they're there. That's why I created AE 9/11 Truth 15 years ago. Now I'm on my own, but I'm still supporting in big ways AE 9/11 Truth, because they have to succeed, and they can succeed a whole lot better by having me out there banging away in ways that I couldn't before because of the narrow message that I needed to stick to, which was the World Trade Center evidence. As you know now, I am branching out. We're bringing in guests who can talk about the planes and so forth. So we have great opportunities here, but with great opportunity comes great responsibility. And I've got to have you guys backing this film. It's extremely important. There's nothing else in the 9/11 Truth movement that I can see at this time that is as important, other than supporting the fundraising effort over at AE 9/11 Truth, also to get the unspeakable film that Dylan Avery made for AE 9/11 Truth out everywhere. They have a fundraising drive. I need you to support them as well. But this
Richard, I'd just like to say that this film is the 9/11 Truth movement collectively. In my opinion, this film is and will be our Archimedes lever that will be able to move the world, not just the United States, not just the government, but the world. And I would appreciate it if you would let people know how they can contribute.
Well, this is important, isn't it? Now, this is real simple. It's LC for Lawyers Committee for FOR 911.org. All you do is type in that website, LC for 911.org, and you'll see a donate button. That's real simple. It just doesn't get simpler than that. Now, you can also read the article that I just posted today on our website, which is richardgage911.org. And you'll see all kinds of buttons on that article that will take you straight over to the donation page at lc4911.org. I hope that's not too complex. Did you want to add to that, Barb?
Well, yeah, we're going to be updating those web pages with our very similar articles, or the main article is now up just as of today on our homepage, the lc4911.org homepage. And up in that right-hand corner, you're going to see a really bright donate button. And both on Richard Gage's website, web pages, and ours, and I think also probably on his Substack page and his Facebook page, and whatever else he ends up doing, you're probably going to see that donate button. And all of those donate buttons that Richard has for this film project will go over to the Lawyers Committee website, and you will go to a landing page where you will be able to say, are you donating to the new film, 9/11 crime scene to courtroom? And you will be able to say yes. If for any reason you say no, your contribution will go into the Lawyers Committee General Fund to support everything else we do, which is, in my opinion, equally important. We're doing this film, but we're not going to not be doing everything else we're doing. So whatever you contribute at our Lawyers Committee website, at our donation button, will either go to the film or to our general fund for all the other legal actions that we're doing.
And Mick, can you talk about some of those other legal actions, because this is not your only project? And
well, let's let Mick do that. I could do that, but let's let our litigation director.
Either way, so we have a lawsuit pending in the second highest court in this country, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. It is the lawsuit we mentioned earlier to compel the U.S. attorney to give our grand jury petition with the demolition evidence to the grand jury. And for those who don't understand the fairly simple logic of that lawsuit, which unfortunately was lost on the government and the district court to some extent as well, the First Amendment gives us all the right to petition the government. As Barb mentioned, the grand jury is a significant branch or element of the government. You can petition the grand jury like any other branch of the government under the First Amendment. And we did that. The U.S. attorney received our petition simply because a federal statute requires it, that we go through the U.S. attorney as protocol. We did that. The U.S. attorney then blocked, apparently, the delivery of our petition, violating our First Amendment rights. So the Second Circuit is about to decide that case, and the decision is simple. Does a federal agency have the power to block the exercise of a constitutional right by any citizen of the United States? And the answer to that is no, they don't. So we hope to win that case. We also have a Freedom of Information Act case. That's a very significant one, probably a little lower on people's radar screen, but we appear to be winning it. We certainly hope to win it. It's been out there for a number of years. We brought this case for David Cole, who was our FOIA Freedom of Information guy at the time. David's done a lot of good work under FOIA, and he asked for all the data on the building performance study by FEMA about the Trade Center collapses. And strangely enough, the response was from FEMA, we don't have any records. Now keep in mind what he asked for. He asked for the data used in their study. They produced a very voluminous study. So how do you produce a study without any data and no records to show the data? That's what they said. They said they had no responsive records. So we pressed them, and then their answer was, oh, we gave all of our records to NIST, the National Institutes of Standards and Technology. So that's why we don't have any to give you. But they literally meant everything, which meant their hard drives, their backups, their emails. Nobody does that, and nobody in the federal government does that. And it's not legal to do that. So we sued them, to make a long story short. And they then gave us a lot of the records they'd been withholding, but they kept the most significant ones back and didn't give them to us. So we continued to press. We filed motions for summary judgment. The magistrate judge issued a decision about a year and a quarter ago in our favor, recommending to the trial judge to grant our motion for discovery. And this would be probably the first time real discovery would happen in a 9/11 case. And also recommended that the government's motion for summary judgment be denied, which means either they lose altogether or they get a public trial. So that's where that case stands. We're waiting on the trial judge to issue the decision on the magistrate's recommendation, which is in our favor. So we did have a Supreme Court petition, which some of you followed us on that, got recently denied. I won't give you the whole story, but we had sued the FBI for not doing what Congress told them to do, which was evaluate all of the 9/11 evidence since the original commission. And they did a whitewash through the Ed Meese 9/11 Review Commission, did a whitewash report. We sued them to compel them to actually look at the evidence, including the demolition evidence, which they completely ignored. And we got dismissed on standing in the district court, which was disturbing.
Explain standing to.
Well, standing means your eligibility to sue under the Constitution. It's more involved than it should be. The Constitution says the federal courts are limited jurisdiction courts. They can consider only cases and controversies, which the federal courts in their wisdom have determined to mean only plaintiffs who are directly significantly impacted by the government action will have standing, the eligibility, the right to sue. And so the district court said we weren't impacted enough, notwithstanding architects and engineers and lawyers committee were basically obstructed in our mission by the government cover-up in the 9/11 Review Commission whitewash. And
well, not only
that,
wasn't it also the case some 9/11 victims' family members were
well, I
told
was just going to say, Robert McIlvaine was a co-plaintiff with us.
Yeah.
And even, it's a tragedy. He lost his son and at the Trade Center, and the courts didn't consider him to be impacted enough to have standing from this. So we were disturbed by that standing argument. We got to the Court of Appeals, the U.S. Court of Appeals in D.C., arguably also the second highest court in the country. And they upheld, unfortunately, the standing decision against us. And in the process, we had a panel of 3 judges that included the current Attorney General of the United States. And I won't belabor this, but at the time we were suing the Department of Justice, one of the judges on our panel is the man who became the head of the Department of Justice. And he was under consideration for that job while he was on our panel. So we asked for a disclosure about those facts to make sure there was no conflict of interest. And, there is a statute that says judges are supposed to recuse when there's even the appearance of impropriety. And the court wouldn't even give us a disclosure. So we petitioned the Supreme Court, and in its wisdom, it chose not to hear our case. It didn't rule against us. It just chose not to hear it. So we are now planning to go to Congress, because this is an easy fix for Congress. One of the reasons we lost, apart from the wrong reasons I just explained, was that Congress had issued this mandate in a funding bill, but only gave the details of it in legislative history rather than the language of the bill itself. And had they put the language in the bill itself, we probably would not have had a problem winning this case. The district court said there wasn't any reporting requirement in the law, so that this $1.5 million or whatever it was study done by or for the FBI did not have to be reported to anyone, even to Congress itself who funded it, which I found to be a bit disturbing. And
we're hoping Congress will find that disturbing as well.
We hope Congress will
soon.
So that's the short version. We're going to, we have a second prong for that strategy, which is to go to Congress and have them fix it. We have a new FOIA campaign coming up, Freedom of Information Act, a lot of new requests for evidence being hidden still on a number of issues, including the Pentagon, including Shanksville, including some issues regarding the aircraft. We've taken a position only as a lawyers committee on the Trade Center and the demolition and the anthrax attacks, but we are looking into the other issues. And when we finish our investigation of those, you'll be hearing more from us on those as well.
Mick, could you talk about our 2 petitions on the anthrax attacks?
If you wish, I could.
Yeah, that's very relevant here.
Well, we did an inquiry into the anthrax attacks that a lot of folks don't realize were follow-on attacks starting 2 weeks after the 9/11 attacks. And based on our investigation, we no longer think that was a coincidence. And it's significant. That conclusion is significant, which I'll explain in a moment. And some of this you'll see unpacked in our film project and our investigation that comes out of it. The short version is that the FBI concluded that after they were forced to, that the anthrax used in the attacks was not from a foreign country or a terrorist organization. It was from the U.S. military. It was high-tech U.S. military anthrax, weapons, bioweapons grade. And so the initial attempt to blame this on Saddam Hussein or on Al-Qaeda failed. And that's significant. I mean, that attempt happened in the media and through the mouths of government officials at the time. Keep that in mind. So is it a coincidence that government officials tried to blame the anthrax attacks on terrorist organizations or Saddam when, in fact, it came from a U.S. military facility? Now, who knows who the perpetrators were? We're still investigating that. But it wasn't who the FBI blamed it on, which was a scientist at Fort Detrick. And as Kristina mentioned, the head of the FBI's investigation made public a lot of defects in that investigation. We found more defects in our petition to Congress. And we actually found a cover-up by the FBI of critical evidence pointing to where the anthrax most likely came from, which was a government facility, either Dugway Proving Ground or a government contractor. So there's more to be investigated there. The short version is those attacks, the anthrax attacks, had the same effect, and we believe the same purpose as the 9/11 attacks, which was to motivate the war on terror, which has been a never-ending war, which has benefited mainly military contractors and politicians, people of a certain worldview. And so they are likely connected. They're not likely coincidental events. And we'll be telling you more about that.
Yeah, I just like, because Richard has up on the screen one of our Lawyers Committee web pages. Richard, could you scroll down just a little bit on that page so we can see the donation button?
Yeah, I don't think it's big enough. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, now we can see. Yeah. Well, I just want you to know, even on any of our pages on the Lawyers Committee website, lc4911.org, wherever you see that donate button, that bright kind of goldenrod donate button, if you click on that, regardless of what it says above now, that one happens to say contribute to legal actions.
Right.
That was before our film project, and we're going to be updating those. But any one of our donate buttons, anywhere on our website or Richard's website.
Oop, we lost Barb. So what she was going to say was, we'll give you the option, and she's coming back, of donating to the new film project or to our legal efforts. And you can select that option when you hit on the donate button, and your money will go to where you intend.
And tonight, we're of course encouraging you to donate to the film project, the 9/11 Crime Scene to Courtroom. Never been done before, completely unprecedented, first-class director on this project. We have $80,000 to go in this fundraising campaign. Now, all that means, this is very simple math, right, Mick? You're a math teacher.
Yes, I vaguely remember.
If there's 80,000 supporters out there, they can make this film happen for what level of donation each?
I think that'd be $1, Richard.
$1. Now, let's say we don't have 80,000 supporters, Mick. Let's say we have 100,000 supporters. Well, excuse me, that's even more. Let's say we have 40,000 supporters. That'd be $2 each.
$2 a piece. That's all it takes.
And if we have 10,000 supporters,
yeah, you need $8.
$8. That's a cup of coffee, right, Mick? What do you spend on coffee?
Well, Starbucks, yeah, or maybe a extra large. With some...
There we go. So this. Now we may not have 10,000 supporters. We might have 1,000 supporters, Mick. That would be how many dollars?
$80 a piece, for less than $100.
$80 for 1,000 of you, average. Some of you can do that. Some of you can't. Some of you can only do $10, like me right now, because I'm orphaned, and I'm building up my base all over again. It's like starting over, guys. It's not easy. We've got we've got 100 supporters over at Richard Gage 9/11. So I encourage you to support me too. That's very important, because I can then make the movie, and And if you support the movie, then yes, I can put my time, my effort into it. I don't have to, go into town and work as an architect, which I would love to do. I miss that very much. But this project is so much more exciting because we're moving mountains. This is Archimedes' lever, as Barb described. We can move the football down the field with a field goal that could go right between the goalposts. That's what this film has the capability of doing. So I wanted to bring it back to our director, Kristina Borjesson, who made TWA Flight 800, which so effectively took the witnesses and the evidence. And I'm sitting there dropping my jaw, Kristina, as I'm watching your movie, and I'm going, this is so obvious. How do we get people to watch it? That's all we really have to do. That's the next step. We're going to be promoting the heck out of this film. It will go free on YouTube. And so it'll be easy to promote because everybody is on YouTube. Those of us who haven't been kicked off of it yet. And that may be.
So Richard, before Kristina does that,
Yeah.
let Barb back in.
You have to let Barbara back in.
Oh, we're so sorry. Once you get kicked out, you have to be let back in. There you are. I am so sorry.
My apologies. My laptop lost its charge for a minute. So.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it wasn't the internet. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
I was in the middle of saying, I think you've taken up on that, but I was just in the middle of saying any donation button on any of our pages, Richard's or the Lawyers Committee, will take you to a landing page where you can say if you're donating to the film. And either way, you can donate to the Lawyers Committee, to our general legal projects that you're hearing more about now, or to the film, but you can specify the film.
Yes. And now back to Kristina. How do we pull the magic buttons of a directorship of this incredible project to make sure that that everyone is deeply touched by it?
Look, it's in the end, it's all about people. Everything's about people. The crimes are about the people who did them. This effort is about the people who are doing it, and individual people are interesting. And people connect with other people, and so it's truly about interweaving, interweaving the information within the context of people, their activities, what they think, what they do, what drives them, etc. And that's how you tell a story. In a way, it's almost like finally some kind of a reality show or something, where you have this guy, this architect who has devoted so much of his time, sacrificed, a lot of his career to do this. I mean, who are you?
Yeah, who are you?
I even want to know.
Yeah,
Mick is the same. I mean, Mick is our litigation director. I mean, people don't realize, like, he's just brilliant. He's brilliant. And his mind isn't just capacious. He has a great memory, which,
he lets other people say that. He doesn't.
And I mean, but personally, I don't know him as well as I'd like to. And I know all of us, everybody's going to get to know him. And then, even our, even the culprits, the people we think are culprits, the witnesses. And so who are they? They had, it was a moment of fate for everybody who's going to be in this film, including the bad guys, who made this decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that Richard wants to start the show with the building that wasn't hit by a plane.
Why is that, Kristina?
Well, because it really shows it's such an anomaly it's such an anomaly, you know, and people, you know, not much attention, as much attention was paid to it, and yet it's kind of the symbol of, it's just the cherry on top of the evil, you know, that they brought down yet another building, you know, and I just, it's just interesting that he starts the whole thing with that mystery.
Yeah,
You
once
know?
you get
I'd like to say something about our project. It's a really big overview, big picture. And that is, what we're really up against is a mass hypnotism of not just the American public, but the world, with the official lie, the official story of 9/11. Now, you heard Kristina say, you have to turn the evidence, not only officialize it, and that's our big challenge, to both officialize it and turn it into a story that moves people, about real people. And so in my mind, our biggest job really with our grand jurors and the public, and especially people who don't know the evidence yet, that will be getting the evidence through this film, they need to understand, I think, right out of the box, that the official story simply cannot be true, and why. But I think rather than, there are two ways to tell a story. You can start with the evidence and build up to the conclusion, or you can begin with the conclusion, then go back to the evidence. As they say, tell people what you're going to tell them what you tell them, and tell them what you told them. And I think it's very important in this film that we do something like that, so that we need to tell a new story about 9/11, not just the evidence, but a new narrative about 9/11 that completely dispositively displaces the old one. I don't think it's enough to just say, we've proven that the official story is false and we need a new investigation. We need to replace, somehow in this film, we need to replace it with the real story.
Excellent. And because of that need, we're going to involve real people now. One of which is my wonderful wife, Gail. Hello, Gail. Welcome back.
Gail.
Hello.
The
Thank
show.
you. Hello,
And
everybody.
You've been touching base with the people on the live stream out there, and I'm guessing that you've gathered a lot of questions.
Yes, I have. In fact, now if I start to read one of the questions and it's one that already was answered, just let me know, because I might get them mixed up. But the first question is from Anthony. He asked, who was the most surprising individual you were able to reach? Was that a question that was answered already?
Not completely.
No, okay. So who was the most surprising individual you were able to convince of the evidence? Toughest nuts to crack, biggest skeptics who capitulated in your lives?
Well, Richard, you were going to tell us yours.
I was really impressed by this Cyril Wecht story, because he was quite skeptical, and because of the persistence of the amazing Kelly David, I mean, she got turned down, and she and Dylan happened to have a half a day or so extra, so they drove all the way across New England to find this gentleman and make an appointment. And sure enough, he was available the next day. They stayed overnight, and he humored them. And in the end, he was completely converted. And now he wants to do everything he can to help the 9/11 Truth movement.
And he was added to the film, what is it, Unspeakable? Unspeakable at the very end, because it was a completely spontaneous conversion on his part.
Yeah. So I love those stories. And so there are more. Do any of you want to share one more? Because we do have to scoot on to the rest of the questions.
Well, Richard, why don't you tell the audience, just in case we have some newcomers, how you were turned around in a car on the freeway in the South Bay, I believe?
Well, yeah, I was a tough nut.
Yeah, you were a tough nut to begin with. A lot of the rest of it.
Well, you were working for Ronald Reagan.
I was.
I was voting for him, and I was a Reagan Republican, what you call, Colin Powell went to make his indisputable presentation on weapons of mass destruction. And I'm going, yeah, we're going to go get those bastards who did this to us. And in Afghanistan and then Iraq, right? I mean, but then in 2006, May 29, David Ray Griffin was on the radio, and he's written 14 books on this subject now. And I was just in shock as I was hearing for the first time in my life about a third tower that came down.
You were driving on the freeway, right?
I wasn't on the freeway, but I was in Lafayette, and I had to pull over because I couldn't drive and listen to this at the same time. It was blowing my mind. I said, surely this guy's lying. But he's an older gentleman. He's, soft-spoken. He's given out all this evidence, very rational gentleman, and all the ends of the beams blown out of the towers, trailing thick white smoke clouds, landing 600 feet in every direction. This is not what gravity collapses do. So, I was deeply moved. I went to hear him the next night, and they were sold out in the Grand Lake Theater in Oakland. So I got really, I had to know. I was angry. I had to know whether this was true or not. I verified it. I talked to people, and there was a local 9/11 truth movement. I go, what? There's a whole movement about all this? They had pilots for 9/11 truth, lawyers for 9/11 truth back then, the early version, and but no architects and engineers for 9/11 truth, not one. It was like, what? This is falling on my back?
Right.
No.
If not us, who? If not now, when?
I'm right. I'm not an activist. I've never done a PowerPoint presentation. So anyway, it turned my life around. That it was very, very difficult for me personally too. I mean, it was like my whole world was turning upside down. Because now
Archimedes' lever. David Ray Griffin was your Archimedes lever, or the facts that he put out. Yeah. And my experience that I'd like to share when you're done is actually about that next night with David Ray Griffin.
All right. Well, you have 60 seconds because I took all your time. So go ahead.
Okay. All right. So Richard just mentioned that he heard this, had to pull to the side of the road, hearing Bonnie Faulkner's Guns and Butter show with David Ray Griffin on all of the World Trade Center. I believe he was talking about the towers more than World Trade Center 7 then, and pulled to the side of the road and was converted, and his life changed completely. That the next night, in fact, was it was part of a Bonnie was advertising David Ray Griffin's presentation at the Grand Lake Theater the next night, and I went there. I was there, so we were both in that audience, although we hadn't met yet.
No, I got kicked out. They were sold out. I had to go home and watch on live stream.
Oh, well, I would have given you my seat if I'd known, Richard, but I didn't know you were there. So anyway, I got in the door, and it turns out, as you know, my brother, my only sibling, a younger brother, lives in Lafayette, where you were living at the time. Yeah. And I had called up him and my sister-in-law and said, I'm just up the road at the Grand Lake Theater here in Oakland. Could I stay overnight so I don't have to drive all the way down to the Monterey Peninsula? They said, oh, sure, come on over. So I got back about a little before 11:30, and they were watching the nightly news. I'm almost to the punchline here. And so I just tiptoed in and sat down in the chair. It was just the two of them. The kids were upstairs. And we watched the end of the news. And then my brother turned it off. And Marilyn, his wife, my sister-in-law, turned to me and said, well, Barb, tell us about it. She's very, very supportive, has always been. And I only got maybe a sentence and a half out of my mouth. She said, well, what was it about? And I started, in a nutshell, I told her what David Ray Griffin had said. Basically that, Al-Qaeda didn't bring down the towers. It had to be an inside job. And which is David Ray Griffin's bottom line after all these years and all of his 14 books. And my brother was sitting across the room, across a large coffee table. And in front of his chair was a very immense ottoman with extremely heavy wooden legs, feet. He picked that thing.
Uh-oh.
No,
We're all left in suspense now.
I won't be able to finish that one for her.
Wow. I got to know how that one ends. Gail,
So,
can you jump?
Richard, can I give a short one while we're waiting on Barbara to come back?
Yeah. Thanks, Mick.
I'll write a short
So-
one that does not involve all the panelists.
Hold on, Gail. We're going to go to Mick first. And then
Oh,
we'll-
okay. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Gail. So,
No
short version with the qualification. In 2016, Richard knows this. He and his colleagues presented evidence to the Lawyers Committee in a public event in New York called Justice in Focus. And one of my tasks was to, with my law school colleague and friend Yvonne Bushyhead, to go and meet with former Attorney General Ramsey Clark, which we did. And I gave him sort of the short version of what we were concerned about and what we were investigating. And I don't want to overstate this because I did not persuade him in the moment. And keep in mind, he was a senior at that time, and his health was, failing. And unfortunately, we've lost Ramsey since then. But he did listen attentively to what we have to say, and he did agree to give us basically a welcome to our Justice in Focus group and that symposium in 2016, which was clearly on 9/11 and all we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't shy away from it. I think he was still open-minded and wanting to investigate it further when we left him because it was a preliminary conversation. But to get a former Attorney General of the United States and someone of his stature to even talk with us and to greet and welcome our group, I thought was, a significant development.
Yeah, that's great.
Can I
All right,
finish
Barbara.
my story?
Yeah, let's
Yes.
jump back.
Yes, Barbara.
Okay. We left it with my brother with this huge ottoman in his hand. He's a pretty strong guy. It was clear that he was intending to throw it across the room and hit me, just to keep me from speaking further to his right.
Oh,
Wow.
But here's there's a good punchline to this. I could see from his face, he realized he's an attorney after all. He knows he can be sued even by his sister.
Uh-huh.
He realized while it was still kind of halfway out of his hands that he'd better not let it get to me. And so he kind of reached out in the air and stopped it enough that it fell on the floor, but those big wooden legs dented my sister-in-law's beautiful hardwood floor. And for a while, at least, she wouldn't let him fix it. Okay. And then I'm going to fast forward a few years because my brother just assumed I was, off the deep end, frankly, for even having gone to this thing, let alone starting to talk about it with any kind of credibility and an open mind. And then on the 5th anniversary, I put on, with a number of top people from the 9/11 Truth Movement, I put on a press conference at the National Press Club. And that was the day before the 5th anniversary. And I flew back because I was a speaker at our local library here in Monterey, California. I'd co-founded our Monterey Peninsula 9/11 Truth Group. And so we were putting on that night the Loose Change. I think it was Final Cut. And as it turns out, my brother, who is an attorney also, happened to be coming to visit the Monterey Peninsula and stay in our apartment. And I found out he was coming. I said, well, Scott, why don't you just drop by the Monterey Library and we can go out to dinner afterwards. And as the film was starting, which my colleague and I made comments on after it was over, took questions, my co-founder and I saw my brother come in right as the film was about to start. The lights had been turned down and he didn't take a seat. There were a few seats, but he stood in the back of the room with his hands like this, watching intently. And at the end, I went up to the front with Peggy Olson, who is my co-founder of the group, the 9/11 Truth Group in Monterey Peninsula, California. And we answered questions, and he stayed through that with his arms no longer crossed in the back of the room. And although we didn't go out to dinner when it was over and people started going out, I did go outside. It was dark already. And something switched in my brother. seeing that film. And I'm mentioning this for a reason, because films make a big difference in people who are that close-minded. If we can get through to my brother, we can get through to anybody.
Oh, great story. Yeah,
That
good point.
is.
You guys are
Thank
going to be able to use this film to convince all of your friends, especially in combination with the fantastic film produced over at AE 9/11 Truth, Unspeakable.
And your
Okay,
family
Gail.
members as well. That's very important.
What's that, Barb?
And your family members as well.
Family members. Yeah, this dividing families.
It is.
Okay, now we're going to commit to giving 1 minute answers or less. Barb, Gail, let's fire them at us.
All right. This is from Anthony. He asked, are there any eyewitnesses to 9/11 who would testify if called upon to do so? I guess any witnesses that you know of.
I think the answer to that is yes. Short answer. A number of them.
That was less than a minute.
There's 156 first responders who are witnesses of explosions, and many of them will be willing to testify, and we can subpoena the rest, right, Mick? Can we do that?
Well, if we in a federal litigation, yes, the grand jury would have to do it in the case of the grand jury. But yes, they could be subpoenaed.
Yeah.
And we can recommend to the grand jury who they might subpoena and why in supplements.
And that's going to be part of your job at home, watching this film when it comes out. We're going to be putting you in the position of not only evaluating the evidence and casting judgment, has a crime been committed, who should be subpoenaed by the grand jury. And we have ways of getting that to them too. How is that done, Mick? Suggestions for material witnesses? Yeah,
I mean, we have submitted already some information under seal, as it were, about people with material evidence or information that could be witnesses for the grand jury. We can continue to do that with the help of the public through supplements to the petition. We've also invited the U.S. Attorney. He hasn't taken us up on it, or she hasn't yet, to actually allow us to present witness testimony to the grand jury. So we could call those witnesses if we get invited. There are a number of ways to do it. We haven't talked about it yet, but we are considering a new lawsuit to ask a judge to give the evidence directly to the grand jury, not just through the U.S. Attorney.
Great. Okay, Gail.
All right. This is a question from Ray, and it is directed to Kristina. He asks, how does jet fuel interact with the explosion of an ordnance? Does it increase the explosion blast of the ordnance? Does it make the explosion of an ordnance more powerful?
Actually, plane fuel is basically kerosene, and it's not very flammable. So ordnance would definitely be powerful enough to ignite that at the jet fuel. So yeah, I mean, it would definitely ignite it, and so there would, it would increase the explosion. But it's the difference between the force and power and pressure of the ordnance and the jet fuel is, it's not, I mean, ordnance is way more powerful. And in the case of TWA Flight 800, the ordnance happened first. Okay. In the case of the buildings, the explosions the explosions were before the plane, right before the planes hit too, I believe, right?
Some after.
Yeah.
In the basement.
Yeah, before and after. Interestingly, a lot of people do not know there were explosions and witnessed by the seismic observatory seconds before the plane hit, up to 10.
No, 14 seconds before the plane hit, approximately, in World Trade Center 1 in the deep basement. 17 seconds before the plane hit World Trade Center 2 in the deep basement.
That's the number. Thank you. We got to keep you around, Barb.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Gail.
This is from Ziola. Whose legal structure do we have to dance around to get anything done?
Oh,
That's a pretty interesting question.
Big one.
So you
I
start
think
with
that
the
one's
U.S.
pretty big.
federal system. It's not the only legal structure. You've got state legal structures and you've got international legal structures.
Mhm.
So at the moment, we're working through the federal system. The federal grand jury has its own unique structure. Federal civil litigation is a separate legal structure. And if you get a grand jury indictment, then the federal criminal prosecution is yet an additional legal structure. So without putting you all through law school, the short, significant point for our immediate task for the grand jury, which is our initial focus, not our ultimate focus, but the initial focus, the grand jury has a lot more flexibility in what evidence it can consider. It doesn't, for example, have to be bound by the federal rules of evidence. It can consider hearsay. It can consider speculation, secondhand reports. It can consider scientific evidence, expert testimony, all the way up to, what we have, scientific laboratory analysis, direct evidence. So that legal structure is fairly straightforward. The grand jury has an obligation to investigate the evidence. It has an obligation to evaluate it and then issue an indictment if there is a sufficient amount of evidence. That's our initial structure. There's more, but it would take more time than I have.
Thank you, Mick. Gail.
All right. And this is another question directed to Mick from Ray. He asks, is there information on the average fragmented fuselage size? Is there a way to exactly determine the amount of fracture energy which was dissipated in the breakup of the aircraft itself?
I haven't seen that evidence. I do believe, though, science can provide that. It's a similar type of analysis to what Richard was talking about and Kristina a little bit about bone fragments. There is a way to do that. You would have a different type of structural breakup of an aircraft from what I would call a typical crash versus one where there was an explosion in the aircraft or there was an explosion in the building after the aircraft hit. And there are different scenarios and probably different scenarios for the different crime scenes. So it's a complicated question. We haven't examined issues about the airplanes as much as the building demolitions. It, however, is on our radar screen. If our resources are sufficient, we'll eventually get there ourselves.
Thanks for the question.
Mm-hmm.
Gail, I
Yeah.
see one from our friend Ibrahim. I want to make sure we get to that because
Oh, that is so funny. He was next. So
oh,
yes,
he was.
that
Oh,
is too funny. Yeah.
he's one of
yes.
my favorite people. Ibrahim, everybody, is a structural engineer, been in the truth movement for the longest time, active, as you can imagine, a supporter of ours at richardgage911.org. Hello, Ibrahim, and here's your question.
The 9/11 Commission report makes for strong evidence against the official story. I never met an American who did read that report. Is there a way to make a documentary film about that report?
Ooh.
Well, it could be done. It may come out in part in our later episodes. We haven't talked a lot about where those episodes are going to go.
You have now met 4 people on the screen who have read I would imagine I have the entire 9/11 Commission report. So now you have 4.
Well, and if you really want to read an interesting book, you should read a book called Unanswered Questions.
Yeah.
Which is a book where the author talks about the questions that the victims' family members had, who as a group were trying to interact with the 9/11 Commission and get them to answer very pertinent and basic questions. And all those unanswered questions are basically define the cover-up that the 9/11 Commission engaged in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, by the way, that's a brand new book.
Yes,
it came out this past September 11th anniversary, the 20th anniversary, and it's called Unanswered Questions. And the author of that book basically answers the questions.
Exactly. Fascinating.
The vast majority of the questions by the 9/11 victims' family members to the 9/11 Commission itself that the commissioner said they were going to answer, and they never did. Like 80% they didn't answer. He does his best to answer those in the book based upon information by people like you're seeing here. tonight.
Ah. Well, Gail, with that, do you think that we can move on? We're at the 2-hour mark, and that's where my production engineer, Alan Reese, he turns into a pumpkin about this time because he produces these for us. So do you have any other earth-shattering questions that we need to
Well,
get?
there's a few more questions, but I always want to say at the end of each podcast that I'm really sorry if I missed any questions. So there are a few, but some of them are kind of provoking long answers. So it might be best to end on this note. They are all wonderful questions though. And as I was just saying, I'm very sorry. I apologize to anyone who asked a question and they didn't get their question answered.
Okay, well, here's what I want to do. I want to ask everybody on our panel tonight to give us a last piece of wisdom and encouragement before we end. For myself, I just want to encourage everybody to do something. Maybe you can't give because that's just right now. It's just you're strapped. I so completely understand that. But what you can do is send this link from this video out to everybody you know. Will you do that? Will you take some action to get the word out there that the new film is being made? We have a limited reach, but with you, all things are possible.
And we already have a matching fund of $40,000. So contribute up to that point, and it's matched.
It's doubled. It's
Doubled.
incredible. Your donation
Doubled.
is doubled.
Your donation
So that's huge.
is doubled.
And what words of wisdom, Barb, can you share with us before we go?
Well, it's just so important for everyone in the movement to understand that this is the film of the entire 9/11 Truth Movement, the one we've been waiting for, and I call it Archimedes' lever, that has the possibility of moving the entire world in the right direction.
Agreed. Mick?
Well, I usually mention that we're involved in sort of a Margaret Mead type of enterprise where a small group of dedicated people actually can change the world for the better.
Yeah.
Although that process eventually needs to lead to a critical mass of a much larger number of people. And I think this film project has potential for getting us to critical mass, starting with the small group of dedicated people we're working with, and with you, the viewer, and the folks who are supporting us. So in any way that you can support us with a donation or getting the word out, you can help us get that critical mass. I would go back to Barbara's comment earlier about our involvement in getting the 28 pages released about Saudi involvement that the Congress had kept secret for so many years, 15 years, whatever it was.
Yeah.
We had an involvement in that, but we weren't the only ones who got that released. We were maybe one of the small groups of dedicated people. We got a key analysis, legal analysis in the hands of Congress people and family members. And then the larger group of family members and Congress people got eventually those 28 pages released. It was a team effort.
It was a team effort, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're
Everybody
talking
has the part to play to make this a success.
Right. And you all out there are part of this team.
Right.
Yeah.
A critical part of the team.
Yep. The part that makes it happen. Kristina, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, I think that 9/11 is the crime that keeps on keeping on. You know, I mean, every day, you know, more criminal activity that we're triggered by 9/11. And in the end, you know, there are, you know, efforts are constantly being made to bring out the truth and so on and so forth. But every once in a while, something special happens that creates a bigger opportunity to make a huge difference. And I truly believe, I mean, that's why I'm part of this. I truly believe that this project is one of those change makers.
It is. And that's why I'm all in. I'm going to devote everything I got to making sure this is the best film under your directorship. and with my co-featured what do we call us? Character.
Protagonist?
Protagonist?
Protagonists.
Yeah.
That's what we are. Mick, and then Barbara behind the scenes, but it will also, I'm
I'm
sure,
not totally behind the scenes.
doing everything we can. This is the team this is the dream team, folks, that you have been hoping for. So if you're going to back a project, this is the time and this is the place to do it. lc4911.org. We're here for you. And if you want to put us to work, then that's what we're willing to do with your backing. So it's time to co-produce the video series, the film, this documentary film that is likely to be changing the world for us.
Give us the title of the film, if you would, Richard.
Yeah, and that is 9/11 Crime Scene to Courtroom, because we're going from the crime scene, we're bringing it to court, specifically the grand jury. So I want to thank everybody. You guys have been great. Thank our wonderful audience and my wonderful co-host, Gail. Thank you, Gail. And,
You're welcome.
And we'll see you all on the path of making this film. Come visit us at richardgage911.org and read about the film in more detail. Come visit lc4911.org and read and donate. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time on Richard Gage 9/11 Unleashed.
We'll be on the air again next week with another very special guest in the 9/11 Truth Movement and beyond. Visit us at richardgage911.org, where you can find our schedule, learn about the WTC evidence, and of course, sign up for our emails and support us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.